And Som the Pahlava came the first to stand before the king, for he desired to speak to him of Zal. But the Shah of the world would not suffer him to open his lips, but said unto him, Go hence, O Som, and take with thee thine army, for I command thee to go yet again to Bat-Tli. Set forth unto Kabul and burn the house of Mirab the king, and utterly destroy his race and all who serve him, nor suffer that any of the seed of Zohak escape destruction, for I will that the earth be delivered of this serpent brood. When Som heard these words he knew that the Shah was angered, and that speech would avail him not. So he kissed the throne and touched the earth with his forehead. And said, Lord, I am thy servant, and I obey thy desires. And he departed, and the earth trembled under the stamping of footmen and of hoofs, and the air of the city was darkened with his spears. Now the news of Som's intent reached even unto Kabul, and the land was sunk in woe, and weeping filled the house of the king. But Zal was wroth, and he went forth to meet his father. And when he was come to the spot where he had encamped his army, he craved an audience. And Som granted it, and Zal reminded him yet again of his oath, and desired that he would spare the land of Kabul, nor visit his judgments upon the innocent. When Som had listened, his heart was moved, and he said, O my son, thou speakest that which is right. To thee have I been unjust from the day of thy birth. But stay thy wrath, for surely I will find a remedy, and thy wishes shall yet be accomplished. For thou shalt bear a letter unto the Shah, and when he shall have looked on thy face, he will be moved with compassion and cease to trouble thee. Then Zal kissed the ground before his father and craved the blessings of God upon his head. And Som dictated a letter to the Shah, and he spoke therein of all he had done for Mythical, and how he had killed the dragon that had laid waste the land, how he had ever subdued the foes of Iran, and how the frontiers were enlarged by his hands. Yet now was he waxing old, and could no longer do doughty deeds. But a brave son was his, worthy and true, who would follow in his footsteps. Only his heart was devoured of love, and perchance he would die if his longing were unsatisfied. And therewith he commended to the wisdom of the Shah the affairs of Zal. When the letter was ended Zal set forth with it unto the court, and the flower of his army went with him. But the fear of Mythical was great in Kabul, and Mirab pondered how he should quench the wrath of the King of Kings. And he spake to Sindacht and said, For that the king is angered against me because of thee and thy daughter. And because I cannot stand before him, I will lead Rudabeh unto his court and kill her before his eyes. Perchance his anger may be thus allayed. Sindacht listened to his words in silence, and when he had ended she cast about her for a plan, for she was quick of wit. And when she had found one she came again into the presence of Mirab, and she craved of him that he should give her the key of his treasury. For she said, This is not the hour to be straight-handed, suffer that I take what seemeth good unto me and go before Som, it may be that I move him to spare the land. And Mirab agreed to her demand because of the fear that devoured him. Then Sindacht went out to the house of Som. And she took with her 300,000 pieces of gold, and 60 horses caparisoned in silver, bearing 60 slaves that held cups filled to the brim with musk and camphor, and rubies, and turquoise, and precious stones of every kind. And there followed 200 dromedaries and 4 tall Indian elephants laden with carpets and brocades of Rum, and the train reached for 2 miles beyond the king's gates. Now when Sindacht was come to Sistan she bade the guardians of the door say unto Som that an envoy was come from Kabul bearing a message. And Som granted an audience, and Sindacht was brought into his presence. Then she kissed the ground at his feet and called upon heaven to shower down blessings on his head. And when she had done so, she caused her gifts to be laid before Som, and when Som beheld these treasures, he marveled and thought within himself, How cometh it that a woman is sent as envoy from a land that boasteth such riches? If I accept them the Shah will be angered, and if I refuse perchance Zal will reproach me that I rob him of his heritage. So he lifted his head and said, Let these treasures be given unto the treasurer of my son. When Sindacht beheld that her gifts were accepted, she rejoiced and raised her voice in speech. And she questioned Som, saying, Tell me, I pray thee, what wrong have the people of Kabul done unto thee that thou wouldst destroy them? Then answered Som the hero, Reply unto my questions and lie not. Art thou the slave or the wife of Mirab, and is it thy daughter whom Zal hath seen? If indeed it be so, tell me, I pray, of her bow tie, that I may know if she be worthy of my son. Then Sindak said, O Pahlava, swear to me first a great oath that thou wilt spare my life and the lives of those dear unto me. And when I am assured of thy protection I will recount all that thou desirest. Then Som took the hand of Sindak, and he sware unto her a great oath, and gave her his word and his promise. And when she had heard it she was no longer afraid, and she told him all her secrets. And she said, I am of the race of Zohak, and wife unto the valiant Mirab, and mother of Rudabeh, who hath found favor in the eyes of thy son. And I am come to learn of thy desire, and who are thine enemies in Kabul. Destroy the wicked, and those who merit chastisement, but spare, I pray thee, the innocent, or thy deeds will change day into night. Then spake Som, my oath is sacred, and if it cost my life, thou and thine and Kabul may rest assured that I will not harm them. And I desire that Zal should find a wife in Rudabeh, though she be of an alien race. And he told her how that he had written to the Shah a letter of supplication such as only one in grief could pen, and how Zal was absent with the message, and he craved her to tell him of Rudabeh. But Sindak replied, if the Pahlava of the world will make the hearts of his slaves rejoice, he will visit us and look with his own eyes upon our moon. And Som smiled and said, rest content and deliver thine heart of cares, for all shall end according unto thy desires. When Sindak heard this she bade him farewell and made all haste to return. And Som loaded her with gifts and bade her depart in peace. And Sindak's face shone brightly, like unto the moon when she hath been eclipsed, and hope once more reigned in her breast. Now listen to what happened to Zal while these things were passing in Sistan. When he was come to the court of Mythicire he hastened into his presence, and kissed the ground at his feet, and lay prostrate before him in the dust. And when the Shah saw this he was moved, and bade his servants raise Zal, and pour musk before him. Then Zal drew nigh unto the throne and gave to the king the letter written by Som the son of Nariman. And when Mythicire had read it he was grieved, and said, this letter, written by Som thy father in his sorrow, hath awakened an old pain within me. But for the sake of my faithful servant I will do unto thee that which is thy desire. Yet I ask that thou abide with me a little while that I may seek counsel about thee. Then the cooks brought forth a table of gold, and Zal was seated beside the Shah and all the nobles according to their rank, and they ate flesh and drank wine together. Then when the mantle of night was fallen over the earth Zal sprang upon his steed and scoured the land in the unrest of his spirit, for his heart was full of thoughts and his mouth of words. But when morning was come he presented himself before the Shah in audience. And his speech and mien found favor in the eyes of the Shah, and he called unto him his wise men and bade them question the stars of this matter. 3 days and 3 nights did the Mubids search the heavens without ceasing, and on the 4th they came before the Shah and spake. And they said unto him, Hail to thee, hero of the golden girdle, for we bring unto thee glad tidings. The son of Som and the daughter of Mirab shall be a glorious pair. And from their union shall spring a son like to a war elephant, and he shall subdue all men by his sword and raise the glory of Iran even unto the skies. And he shall uproot the wicked from the earth so that there shall be no room for them. Segsars and Mazindran shall feel the weight of his mace, and he shall bring much woe upon Tehran, but Iran shall be loaded with prosperity at his hands. And he will give back sleep to the unhappy, and close the doors of discord, and bar the paths of wrongdoing. The kingdom will rejoice while he lives, and Iran will grave his name upon their seals. When the Shah had heard this he charged the Mubids that they keep secret that which they had revealed unto him. And he called for Zal that he might question him and test his wisdom. And the wise men and the Mubids were seated in a circle, and they put these questions to the son of Som. And the first opened his mouth and said, 12 trees, well grown and green, fair and lofty, have I seen, each has sprung with vigorous sprout, sending 30 branches out, wax no more, nor wane, they can in the kingdom of Iran. And Zal pondered a while and then answered and said, 12 moons in the year, and each I praise as a new-made king on a new throne's blaze, each comes to an end in 30 days. Then the second Mubid questioned him and said, Thou whose head is high in air, read me now of coursers twain, both are noble, swift to speed, black as storms in the night, one steed, the other crystal, white and fair, they race forever in haste in vain, towards a goal they never gain. And Zal thought again yet a while and answered, two shining horses, one black, one white, that run forever in rapid flight, the one is the day, the other the night, that count the throbs of the heavens' height, like the hunted prey from the following chase they flee, yet neither wins the race. Then the third Mubid questioned him and said, 30 nights before the king pass along. Regard the thing closely, one is gone. Again look, the 30 are in train, and Zal answered and spake, 30 nights of whom the train is full, then fails, then fills again, no, each moon is reckoned thus, so willed by God who governs us, and thy word is true of the faint moon's wane, now failing in darkness, now shining plain. Then the fourth Mubid questioned him and said, see a green garden full of springs, a strong man with a sickle keen enters, and reaps both dry and green, no word thine utmost anguish rings. And Zal bethought him and replied, thy word was of a garden green. A reaper with a sickle keen, who cuts alike the fresh and the dry, nor heedeth prayer nor any cry, time is the reaper, we the grass, pity or fear his spirit has, but old and young he reaps alike. No rank can stay his sickle strike, no love, but he will leave it lorn, for to this end all men are born. Birth opes to all the gate of life, death shuts it down on love and strife, and fate, that counts the breath of man, measures to each a reckoned span. Then the fifth Mubid questioned him and said, look how two lofty cypresses spring up, like reeds, from stormy seas, there builds a bird his dwelling place, upon the one all night he stays, but swift, with the dawn, across he flies, the abandoned tree dries up and dies, while that whereon he sets his feet breathes odors out, surpassing sweet. The one is dead for ever and aye, the other lives and blooms alway. Then Zal yet again bethought him before he said, hear of the sea-born cypresses, where builds a bird, and rests, and flees. From the ram to the scales the earth o'erpowers, shadows obscure of the night that lowers, but when the scales sign it must quit, darkness and gloom o'ermaster it. The sides of heaven thy fable shows, whence grief to man or blessing flows, the sun like a bird flies to and fro, will with him bringing, but leaving woe. Then the sixth Mubid questioned him, and it was the last question that he asked, and he deemed it the hardest of all to answer. And all men hung upon his words and listened to the answer of Zal. And the Mubid said, builded on a rock I found a town. Men left the gate and chose a thicket on the level ground. Soon their soaring mansions rose, lifting roofs that reached the moon, some men's slaves, some kings, became, of their earlier city soon the memory died in all. Its name none breathed. But hark! An earthquake, down, lost in the chasm lies the land, now long they for their rock-built town. Enduring things they understand. Seek in thy soul the truth of this before kings proclaim, I was, if rightly thou the riddle read, black earth to musk thou hast changed indeed. And Zal pondered this riddle but a little while, and then opened his mouth and said, the eternal, final world is shown by image of a rock-built town, the thicket is our passing life, a place of pleasure and of pain, a world of dreams and eager strife, a time for labor, and loss, and gain. This counts thy heartbeats, at its will prolongs their pulse or makes it still. But winds and earthquake rouse, a cry goes up of bitterness and woe, now we must leave our homes below and climb the rocky fastness high. Another reaps our fruit of pain, that yet to another leaves his gain, so was it I, must so remain. Well for us if our name endure, though we shall pass, beloved and pure, for all the evil man hath done, stalks, when he dies, in the sight of the sun, when dust is strewn on breast and head, then desolation reigns with dread. When Zal had spoken thus the Shah was glad, and in the assembly were amazed, and lauded the son of song. And the king bade a great banquet be prepared. And they drank wine until the world was darkened, and the heads of the drinkers were troubled. Then when morn was come Zal prayed that the Shah would dismiss him. But Minakir said, not so, abide with me yet another day, and he bade the drums be beaten to call together his heroes, for he desired to test Zal also in feats of strength. And the Shah sat upon the roof of his house and looked down upon the games, and he beheld Zal, the son of song, do mighty deeds of prowess. With his arrow did he shoot farther and straighter than the rest, and with his spear he pierced all shields, and in wrestling he overcame the strongest who had never known defeat. When the nobles beheld these doughty deeds they shouted and clapped their hands. And Mythicier loaded Zal with gifts. Then he prepared a reply unto the letter of song. And he wrote, O my Pallava, hero of great renown, I have lease, tend to thy desires, and I have beheld the youth who is worthy to be thy son. And he hath found favor in my sight, and I send him back to thee satisfied. May his enemies be impotent to harm him. Then when the Shah had given him leave to go, Zal set forth, and he bare his head high in the joy of his heart. And when he came before his father and gave to him the letter of the Shah, Sam was young again. For happiness. Then the drum sounded the signal to depart, and the tents were prepared, and a messenger, mounted on a fleet dromedary, was sent unto Merab to tell him that Sam and Zal were setting forth for Kabul. And when Merab heard the tidings his fears were stilled, and he commanded that his army be clad in festal array. And silken standards of bright color decked the city, and the sounds of trumpets, harps, and cymbals filled the air. And Sindacht told the glad tidings to Rudabeh, and they made ready the house like unto a paradise. Carpets broidered with gold and precious stones did they lay down upon its floors, and set forth thrones of ivory and rich carving. And the ground watered with rose water and wine. Then when the guests were come near unto Kabul, Merab went forth to meet them, and he placed upon the head of Zal a crown of diamonds, and they came into the city in triumph. And all the people did homage before them, and Sindacht met them at the doors of the king's house, and poured out musk and precious stones before them. Then Sam, when he had replied to their homage, smiled, and turned to Sindacht and said, How much longer dost thou think to hide Rudabeh from our eyes? And Sindacht said, What wilt thou give me to see the sun? Then Sam replied, All that thou wilt, even unto my slaves and my throne, will I give to thee. Then Sindacht led him within the curtains. And when Sam beheld Rudabeh he was struck dumb with wonder, for her beauty exceeded dreams, and he knew not how he could find words to praise her. Then he asked of Merab that he would give unto him her hand, and they concluded an alliance according to custom and the law. And the lovers were seated upon a throne, and Merab read out the list of the gifts, and it was so long the ear did not suffice to hear them. Then they repaired unto the banquet, and they feasted 7 days without ceasing. And when a month had passed Sam went back to Sistan, and Zal and Rudabeh followed after him. And speedily did he set forth again to battle, and left the kingdom in the hands of his son, and Zal administered it with wisdom and judgment. And Rudabeh sat beside him on the throne, and he placed a crown of gold upon her head.